Hello beautiful. We test all kinds of wheels and peripherals at Team VVV and all kinds of racing games. And I like to test games that are for the arcade gamer, everything from Mario Kart to sim racing. And recently I was charged with testing a $39.99 steering wheel, a cheap steering wheel, to see if I could drive with it, how it actually performed, and how it worked with someone who, myself, who's tested a lot of sim racing products. Now this is a very brief test. I've just run it on Gran Turismo. I've just thought we're not going to go super in depth on this, but I thought just have a try out, see how we get on. And you can see here a bit of racing from later in the video. I'm going to progress there and talk about it in a bit more detail. But you can see the wheel here, the box from Numskull, $39.99. What do you get for your money? Look at that, 2-year guarantee. This wheel is going to take punishment, lots of punishment. But you can see the box here, just with the various reprogrammable buttons. We didn't go into all of that, but obviously you'll be able to set that up for your any given game if you want to have manual shifting, and of course compatible there with PS4, PS3, Xbox and PC as well. Lots of compatibility to explore. What's the point of a wheel like this? You know, it's a children's wheel. It's quite small. You'll see compared to my giant hands, it is a bit small for me to use. The wheel has a limited lock, as you can see. That's full lock right there, and just bounces to the centre. There's no actual force feedback, but that's fine. That works fine. It works like an old Mad Catz from the 90s. Suction cups on the base, so it's not going to go anywhere if you put it on your table. The resistance is less than the actual suction cups if you get them down properly. And you've got the pedals, the baby pedals, as you can see, barely as big as my thumb. This was quite challenging for my size 12 feet. My feet are actually bigger than the whole pedal plate, so you know, yes, the pedals are the challenge for me. Actually, the wheel is actually quite fine. The pedals were a bit of a challenge. So there it is, and it's nice enough. You know, it's again a children's wheel. This is for your kids. They want to play a bit of driving games. They don't know if they're really bothered about it, or they want to play on your super expensive sim racing gear and you don't want them playing on it, so you can get them something just to muck around with. Now, to go really upmarket for this, the suction cups didn't all fit onto my rig, so I had to go old school sellotape in securing the wheel down. So you can, there you go, there is the stunning sellotape look on my rig there, and why not? Only one piece of tape for the pedals, that's all you need. There's not enough resistance on the pedals to push them off, so worked fine. And of course jumping on to Gran Turismo Sport. Now you won't see me doing any kind of sport mode. This is actually in order, this video, so you're actually going to go from seeing me in my first ever go. This is my first ever run with this wheel, and I thought, well, we really need to record the learning process, because otherwise it will look like it's just too easy. Frankly, it takes a bit of getting used to, you know, the whole sensitivity. I was braking too hard initially. The sensitivity was extremely high, and it was quite funny to use, because I realised quite quickly you have to use the controller actually attached to the wheel. So while you're running this, there's a little USB cable at the base of the wheel that connects to your controller, and you need that connected. So the wheel connects to the PlayStation and to your controller for various controls. The wheel adapts itself to the handling of the controller. So you're doing this as if you're using a stick. So I did a bit of practice. I sort of sped this up a little bit to get to a better lap. So I did 3 laps, and then thought, right, I'm learning every single time how I'm supposed to brake and accelerate through various different corners. And now we'll watch a full lap again now, just with what I've learned. What are we using here? We're using racing soft tyres in this particular car. Braking later. The brakes are locked almost immediately, and it's completely different. My braking was better with this wheel than it is with a normal wheel, because it goes to such a high percentage so quickly with so little travel. I actually found better braking points. I was braking later with this wheel than I would do with my sim wheel. which means that there's time to find, and it showed me how I actually need to modulate my brake on my sim wheel, just because I was getting a bit more out of it. And I don't know whether that's down to the fact that the controller has some additional assists to it. I really couldn't say, but certainly under braking, the car was braking later and more stable. You had to brake in a straight line, otherwise the car would become unstable because of the oversensitivity of the steering. So I'm barely moving the wheel. That takes a bit of getting used to. I mentioned in a video recently in the Thrustmaster testing that I use a sensitive wheel anyway, so admittedly it's a bit sensitive on some games, and I'm used to it, I suppose, because 20 years ago, in the 90s, when you were racing with your Mad Catz wheel or something on the PlayStation, all the games were, the analog was quite basic. You were basically driving the movement of an analog stick, so you didn't have any more rotation than that. It really was quite limited. So rotation is quite limited, and therefore you need to steer about barely half the amount you normally would, a quarter of the amount you normally would. You've got to get that into your head. Doesn't mean it's undrivable, just means it takes a bit of getting used to. So a couple of practice laps, and now we go into a race and we see how we get on. Now, what am I doing here? Assists are off except for gears. I didn't reprogram the buttons to change the gears. The paddle shifters default as view change and look back, and I thought, well, I don't really want to change all my buttons and mess up my own standard profile. But you can change all of that, obviously, and you can set the wheel up to suit whatever you like. Now, using automatic, I would say generally a lot of players are going to use automatic, they're going to use assists on, braking later there every time, getting used to that. Then I'd sometimes get a bit of oversteer here, but I found I could drive into the corner more and get on the power. It's working well for me. AI set to professional, but as we all know, the AI is never that challenging anyway compared to being online. But I didn't want to go online because obviously that would just destroy my profile, so I'm going to save that till I've got my proper wheel set up again. Lap times weren't too bad actually. A lot of the course it was, yes, you lose time here and there, but if you're giving this to someone who's young and they want to, get into a bit of GT sport, you can comfortably compete with C and probably even B class drivers, maybe up to B class. You won't get higher than that, but you'll certainly get to that class and be able to compete. There's a lot of people who are C class drivers, and you'll be racing with them with automatic gears and probably doing just fine, really. The way the pedals were locking up under braking in a positive way, I mean, the car was really slowing down into the corners in a way in which I haven't experienced with my pedals. It was quite strange, but then it was very unstable through this section. I didn't know, I couldn't trail brake or anything like that, and it just became a little bit challenging. I had to sort of lift earlier, decelerate more to get through the chicane. So that's an area where, I'm not saying you couldn't do it, just need practice, lots of laps, and we weren't going to run this on this video. So I come to the end of the first lap then, and I'm feeling okay. I'm learning what the car's doing, and this is literally live laps. We had 3 test laps, 3 race laps. I'm going to do 3 more race laps to form my analysis. Getting used to the turning every time, getting used to the turning circle, and gradually closing. We're running on a standard PS4 here, it's not a PS4 Pro, it's just a standard PS4. And coming to the braking zone, we've got a rough braking zone anyway. I'm braking a little bit later than I normally would, and you see how I oversteered into the corner? The car was decelerating so much quicker than I'm used to that I was finding lots of time. It was quite surprising how late I could brake into the corners here. So yeah, I definitely think when I go back to my pedals, my actual pedals now, I'm going to muck around with the sensitivity to see if I can get a bit more optimum braking out of them. So I feel that there is definitely room to improve there in terms of full lock, how long it takes to get to full lock, how much travel there is in my pedals. So it's something I'll look at because it's all about finding time. You're losing the time under braking. If you're losing a lot of time there, so you're losing a good time throughout the lap, and that might help me with my actual competitive races. This corner was quite challenging because you see I'm barely turning the wheel, so you have to keep a mindset. Here you can do flat, but I may have lifted slightly sometimes just to keep some balance, and I'm lifting here. I thought I was going to go past somebody there, but he suddenly shot past me because I was struggling under the braking there. So getting locked behind, unable to find a way past then. That was quite a surprise from the AI. For late braking around the outside into the death chicane, which we know is going to be bad if we end up in the wall. So we don't want to do that on the video. So this is it, out braking on the inside this time. Not much travel in the pedals, so you just almost just on and off. You get a slight touch of power, but you're generally pumping the gas rather than being progressive. Do remember that I'm controlling this car with my toes, so only my big toes are on the pedals throughout this entire video. So it is a bit small for me. So I was working my way around. Do you know, I've forgotten all about that at this stage. Obviously, when you're driving, you're just in it to win it, as it were, and maximise it. So I wasn't hanging around. I was being looking for relatively clean overtakes and just maximising the speed. This corner was good. You know, I hooked it up well there. Actually, look how the car went round the corner. I mean, it was hooking it up. What's going on here? Why on earth is this car going so fast with this wheel? So there's definitely some hidden skills. There's definitely some tricks with this wheel, I think. So I was surprised at the braking. The car did seem very quick. So I'm definitely going to have to look at what's been going on with my gear and have a tune of it. Because I think that maybe a little less progressiveness might help me. A little bit more aggressiveness on my brake settings in particular. That's the corner I was struggling with though. But through on the inside, bit of a late overtake there. Saw the opportunity, took the wider line in, and now we're good to finish the lap. I think I make a slight mistake here. There I do, just touching the wall. Whoops daisy. Went a bit faster there, but trying to get quicker through that chicane just to see that I could do it, and I could do it. So what you're seeing here in terms of lap time of automatic gears is pretty basic. We can go faster than this. We can knock off time on every single corner. So there's loads of time to be found, comfortably quick enough for a lot of sort of average drivers out there, younger drivers, average drivers, people who just want to stick something to a coffee table, muck around. But it is very sensitive, so you will need to get used to it. That's the thing. You know, some drivers are quite adaptable. I have to be adaptable because I'm using different wheels all the time, different games. But to some of you out there, it might take a little bit of time to find your rhythm with it. That's all you need. It's a bit of practice, a bit of time. I thought I'd try a different circuit now, Tokyo. Lots of walls. And just try here, a bit of Tokyo in a faster car now, Ford GT. And I found the car just got better and better for me when I was driving this. We're driving on hard tyres now, so again, we've got the traction off, hard tyres, less grip. Let's see what the cars are like with less grip. Let's see how squirrely it gets on the power. So now remember, it thinks I'm using a control pad. It doesn't think I'm using a wheel. That's the interesting thing about this. So struggling a bit through that corner because we didn't have any progressive power to push the car out. And I tend to drive by turning in, and then I have a certain amount of lock, and then I use the power to push the car out on the exit. So we're having to be progressive with the power, but I'm finding some progression. I'm struggling here. This was a section of track I was struggling with, because I sort of had to lift a bit and get on the power because it was very much pumping through there. Braking a bit earlier. Car, you can see there, struggling a bit there. Car was oversteering, so the sensitivity took a bit of getting used to, because I've done that corner so many times with my proper wheel that I sort of struggled a little bit with it. Trying to find the line through here. What I'm doing is lifting and coasting a bit more than I normally would, and then getting on the power. So I'm changing my driving to suit a bit of braking there. Car in, that's it. Try and stay on line. Aggressive on the power again here. Struggling with the oversteer a little bit through that corner. Now we're coming to a heavy braking point, and I think I might brake a little bit earlier. Again, I'm finding new ways to brake later than ever. You know, we're braking later than ever before into this corner. Though I am getting a little bit of understeer through the corner, despite the slow speed. On the power, back in, stepping out a little bit, lifted, and then back on the power again. And we're okay, not too bad, not too bad, not too bad, are we, with a 39.99 steering wheel. So now we're going to the next lap, and you know, the funny thing is, people say to me, does a wheel make you faster? It does, but you do need if you gave this wheel to, you know, TRL Lightning, you know, if you gave him this wheel, he would still destroy you on Gran Turismo. I mean, if you gave this wheel to a, you know, Super GT or an esport expert, they will destroy you on Gran Turismo, because a lot of it's down to knowing when to brake, when to turn in, when to use the tools that are available to you. But if you give them a really good wheel with a lot of feedback and more to work with, then obviously they'll destroy you even more. And this is where you can see now, progressing every time. You can hear the tyres squealing as I'm leaning more on the tyres, getting more out of the car. This is the corner again I'm struggling with. See, it was oversteering. I had to come off the power a bit. So I lost a second through that section just because I had to lift there. So that's the section. What's happening? We're hitting a few bumps. We're hitting a few bumps, and the car's becoming unstable with the bumps. And then I'm trying to just work with the power to keep the car stable as I can. Into this corner, turning nice and early, again progressive, lifting. I'm probably a bit slower on the power, but we're using all the track, and again a progressive lift there. Taking it easy, you could get on the power earlier, let the car lean out a bit wider there, not too bad, nice and tight in there. Ooh, bit of oversteer again. So it's these little elements of just oversteer that you need to get used to. Once you know your lock correctly, and you've done plenty of laps, and do bear in mind, this is a short review, just a number of laps, getting a feel for it. And no, I'm not going to be testing it on lots of different games, but bearing in mind we know the basics of how it works. I think if you've got smaller feet, it's definitely much better to use. And if you want something on the coffee table just to muck around with now and again, then it's going to be quite handy for that as well. So going into the final lap, I believe. Final lap, absolutely now, third place, working our way up through the order and along the long tunnel. Bit of slipstreaming, but I like to get out early. The AI a little bit unpredictable, and the car is, because it's so sensitive, you just really got to move the wheel a millimetre. There's a little dot, and I used the little dot that it shows you of where the analog stick is on the screen a little bit just to help me. And I used in car as well. I just found it helpful seeing the hands on the wheel in car, because you'll see the hands on the wheel move far more than, so they're completely out of line with what I'm doing here. And again, that's not wheel lag. This is different to with any kind of lag with the wheel. This is just the fact that the controller is completely different setup to what I'm seeing. But I can see what the hands are doing on screen, and it was very helpful for me to understand what the car in game was doing compared to my inputs. We're getting better through the chicane. Every lap, you see, we've learned about what the problems are. The racing line is there, the laps are there, you know, we're really feeling the car more and more, maximising it through the corners. I mean, even if we were online right now, we'd be doing okay. I mean, from average player's point of view, automatic gears is fine. I know it's unless you get into the upper echelons of the A racers and the A plus and S racers, you know, you can just enjoy some racing on Gran Turismo, and this will suffice. So a decent wheel to round up, to come around the last couple of corners. Final heavy braking. I brake a bit later this time. There we go, nice and late into the corner, and it hooks up nicely to the apex. Carried probably a little bit too much speed there, but that was okay actually, not bad at all. And that's it for this video, looking at the Numskull wheel. $39.99, what a bargain basement wheel, and it taught me a few things as well. Certainly some things I'm going to investigate with my sim racing set afterwards. But that's it from me for now as we finish this run, and there'll be more from me very soon. Hello viewers, well thanks for watching the video today. Do like and subscribe, it supports what we do. Do become a YouTube member. YouTube Patreon supports all of our content you see on the channel, and of course lots of gaming from retro to modern games. I love it all in terms of racing action. So click on one of the two videos just there to find out more.